All right, folks. All right, folks. Hope we're doing well. Nearly 1 o'clock UK time, and I'm going to get started in a moment. Just good to connect with you. Just say hello. If you don't know me, my name's Steve Ingham, and I'm a physiologist by trade. I've worked in Olympic and Paralympic sport, working with professional teams for the last 27-ish years, and for the last 7, I've run my own consultancy, and so that is, I guess, my lived experience. But what's been fascinating over the years is just how I've seen this as an option for performance staff to grow. So that's why I want to open up the discussion today, and I'm fascinated to hear what your experience is, whether you're hoping to do that, and I'm going to set up the chat in a moment just to make sure I can see any questions that might be coming in. If you've got any questions at any point, put them in the chat. You do have to be subscribed to the YouTube channel for you to do that. So if that's something you want to do. At the end of the session today, the recording will get whizzed into YouTube, and that will be replayable for you if you want to go back through some of the material. And because you've subscribed to Supporting Champions, there's also going to be some extra resources. So you've got this session today, which hopefully will support you and give you some support and some value today. But we've also got a number of blogs and podcasts that we're going to share with you too, some extra resources that you might want to work with. So let's get into today. Like I say, my name's Steve Ingham. I'm a performance scientist by trade. I led the high performance system, the science team and medicine team in the UK at the English Institute of Sport. I was at the British Olympic Association, where I was the sports science manager too. And so some of that perspective, what that shows me is some of the demands placed upon staff that are working with teams, and also working with professional setups. I can see some of the dynamics that people are working with. And this question about setting up your own consultancy, I think, is an interesting one. It's a fascinating topic, because people feel this sort of pull of, actually, I'd like to do something like that, or I'm thinking about doing that. But if I'm already working in a role, then I've got a few tensions. So as to whether I should do that or not. And I want to get into that today, because I think these are some of the dynamics that we've got to work through. So this hopefully is what I'm going to kind of go through today. Some reasons that you might be interested in setting up your own consultancy, some strengths and weaknesses. If you're in a role already and you're thinking about doing this, what are the strengths and weaknesses that you might experience of being inside a system and outside of a system, being independent versus being locked in. Then some doubts and some gremlins. I think this is the reality of working as an independent consultant and running your own business, being sort of effectively self-employed. And some of the doubts and concerns that you might have thinking about it, and also within that. If you go for it, then there's one at least major decision you've got to make, and I'm going to give you that. There's loads actually, but I'll give you the know-how about that first decision, and then creating your offer. I'll give you some tips about how you can actually pitch yourself. I don't think performance support staff are very good at pitching their value add. That's in role. That's if you're employed, let alone actually creating an offer that you're ultimately looking to sell. Because ultimately, that's what we're doing with coaches and athletes. We're selling concepts all the time. But what we're not doing is the transaction bit of, oh, you want to buy that from me, you want that analysis, you want that nutrition, you're going to have to pay for that. So we don't do that very well. And any questions for you, really? Like I say, the chat is open. If you want to ask any questions at any point, then just subscribe to the channel, and you can post any questions and follow up. And I'd be glad to try and spend some time to at least offer my view and my lived experience. We also do support a number of people who run their own consultancy in our community. I'm not here to promote that necessarily, but if you do want more, there's courses in the community there for you. But really, if you're interested in this area, then there's potential for you to get results. And I mean that in the sense of setting something up that you could offer to people that can help them, but also helps you. And this kind of gets onto the main reasons as to why you might be thinking about developing your own consultancy. And again, let me know, if you're happy to respond in the conversation here today, what is it that what's driving you towards this? I think there's a couple. One that potentially you just have no choice, that you might be made redundant or you get the sack. Whether that is turnover from, the gaffers left a club and I've got to go with them, or the whole support team has been made redundant, or actually you've just run the course and they're restructuring and the loyalty that you thought you perhaps developed over the years has not been seen through. So you may be made redundant, or you've got a sense because of maybe an experience like that actually I'm employed to do a role, but I want to take a little bit more ownership for my income. I want to just have a little bit more of a grasp of what have I got to offer, and maybe some people could benefit from that, and I could benefit from that too in terms of transaction. You want a new challenge? That was one of the biggest drivers for me to set up my own consultancy. I wasn't being made redundant. I wanted to take a bit of ownership. I wanted a new challenge, just to see whether I could do it or not, or an idea. What is the idea that you have? Whether that is a product, whether that is an application, whether that is a way of reframing something that is simple and old traditional concepts, but you have an idea that you want to put out there into the world. The reality is that the gig economy, so working in small gigs for a return of income, is growing. This has definitely been accelerated by the pandemic, where people are looking for blended roles. They're questioning whether they want to be employed. They don't know whether they want to go into the office as much. But the gig economy is definitely growing. And I think that this is something that we definitely need to better prepare our future, or our graduates of the future, for being able to work with this, understand the simple things you need to put in place if you want to run a business, whether that is your insurance, whether that is how to register with the government organisation, whether that is running a tax return. You've got to be able to do those things. And why wouldn't we want to learn some of those skills too? So that's kind of the main reasons as to why we might be thinking about this, but that it's worth us recognising the pull and the tensions that we might be feeling if we were employed and self-employed. Self-employed I use as a broad term. Basically, you work for yourself. I work for my company, so I'm effectively self-employed, but I'm not self-employed. I'm employed by my company. Anyway, so if you're employed, what have we got? What's the strengths? What's the benefit of being employed? Now, some of these are blindingly obvious. It's more stable. There's predictable levels of income. You know what you're going to be getting at the end of the month. That role is probably defined for you. So, right, there you go. That's the bit that you do. And you'll probably get some support. So, human resources support, that we call it in the UK, you call it other things different around the world. But you get some support. So, there's a legal obligation to employers and employees. And so you get that support. You don't when you're working for yourself. Therefore, you get some employment rights. You should be treated in certain ways that have a legal standard. You'll get time off, paid annual leave, typically, and potentially some additional bonuses. Now, that could be some financial bonuses if your team performs particularly well, but there might be some other healthcare or certainly pension benefits. That's a normal thing if you've got a contract of employment. Other things that are worth recognising, that you'll be part of a team. So you'll be part of something. You'll be part of a group. And with that, certainly I've felt the benefit of that over the years of actually you're part of something. You're going to be associated. You've got an identity. You will also be working to a corporate goal. So goals that could be very powerful for you, could be very compelling, but they're corporate goals. What are the downsides? Some of the downsides might be that if you're employed, let me just hold on a second. before I go any further. Good. Technical little check there. If you're employed, what are some of the downsides? Well, there's going to be a little bit less flexibility. You can't just go, you know what I fancy doing today? I'm going to go over there and do this. Well, so less flexibility in the role. You'll be working to other people's goals. You'll be working on your own goals, but ultimately you'll be working for somebody. That is what employment is. We'll pay you to do this in return for you committing to do that. And so typically a business will employ somebody to make more money for that business. That's their role. Now, charities and public sector, that doesn't necessarily stack up, but you're delivering a role that is worth some value, but you have to deliver to their goals. Now, in that, you're going to be constrained by the salary scales that you're on. So there's a limit to your income, and there are limitations to the number of opportunities that you get to negotiate a salary. So actually pitching for work when you're self-employed, there's no end to how much you potentially could earn, but there'll be a limit if that is your only source of income from employment. There'll be boundaries to the role and the scope of your work, so there'll be a bit of a limit to that. And for your own income, you should know that the maths don't necessarily stack up. So if you add £10,000 to your salary, so if you go from £50,000 to £60,000, for example, you're not going to see all of that. There's a law of diminishing returns. The more you earn, the more you're likely to go and get taxed. And so there's a limit to that because of the way that you pay taxes when you're employed. And there'll be policies. There'll be things that restrict how you communicate, the things that you can actually go and explore and deliver. There'll be a conflict of interest register. You can't do these things. We're not going to accept you being able to go off and just say anything. That's when you sometimes see that in someone's Twitter bio, my opinions are my own. Self-employed, less predictable, much, much less predictable. For many, this is the limiting factor. It is unstable. So potentially you just don't know where that income is going to come from next. If you're running it all, if you have a business that has a degree of complexity, you're going to be the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the chief operating officer, the chief marketing officer. You're going to do it all. And so whilst you might have this amazing scope of work, you're going to have that amazing scope of responsibility too. One thing I can't stress enough is that you are highly dependent upon your network. So this is about you making sure that you have a strong network of people that you can call upon in the good times and the bad. Actually just going out there and saying, would you like me to work for you, is something that almost is a requisite for you to have a network behind you. So there's two parts to this, is that you've got to go and find work, you've got to go and prospect, you've got to go and scope it out, but then you've got to go and deliver. So yesterday I was working for a company and a team and delivering, and I had a few things that I needed to develop and actually to move on behind the scenes, but I was restricted. So there was a limit to how much you can balance there. Potentially isolation. So talk to a number of creators, and actually they find it quite lonely. You're working on your own, and you're working on your own, and you don't have this sort of sense of walking through the doors of a place and a company, and you feel like you belong. And part of that is the pressure. I've got to put some food on the table, and I've got to try and get some income, and I feel that pressure all the time. And so that's something you have to recognize. I don't know whether any of these are actually that too dissimilar from being employed. Certainly for a few people, is they might feel isolated in work. They might feel some of different types of pressures rather than the pressure of going to find work. On the upside of being self-employed, there's an awful lot of freedom. I wake up in the morning and I think, I can do what I want, except for the days that I'm delivering. But I get to choose who I work with. There's full accountability. If it doesn't work, it's on me, and I don't have to look across and around the team for what happened. and you get to own something. You get to explore where you want to go. You want to find something, get some diverse learning, go for it, get out there. You get control over your income, and there's no cap on that earning. And so you have that ownership, and certainly being able to earn a bit more than you would do in a role in performance sport, then there's certainly a difference in the scope and the amount that you can earn working for yourself. I think there's an opportunity for you to be true to yourself, your values, your identity, and part of that is that you can actually create something that is slightly bigger than yourself. I think there's also just the sense of, certainly for me, and this is my philosophy, is that you do good work and you will build a reputation over time, but that does take a bit of time to do that. And so if you've done good work in the past, that is a reputation that you should be leaning on. So there's a few of the things that you should see from either side. If you're thinking that grass is always greener, it's not. It's just different. If you wake up and think, I've got to kind of create work, or I get to create work today, or I don't know where to start. Actually, I've got an enormous amount of freedom. I don't know where the next thing is going to come from. Okay, let's go and find that. So there's different ways in which you can view the pressures. I wouldn't say they're any bigger, but for some people, a couple of them are unpalatable. Some might be working for other people, I just don't want to do that maybe. Or for others, it's a case of, actually, I just want to know what I'm earning this month. So it's up to you. So the first step. Okay, and I highlight this because it sounds like a simple one, but actually this is the first real decision you're likely to have to make if you're running your own consultancy. And there's a very specific reason for that, and that is that choosing a name is the first step, because if you register a business as a sole trader, as we call it in the UK, or if you have a limited company, you legally have to choose a name. So you put your address and business details down, a date of birth, and all these sorts of things. But you have to put a name. You have to choose a name that you will trade under. So there's two main options for you to choose here, and there are others, but I think these are the two major ones. So just to go for a personal one. So this would be like Michael Johnson Performance. This would be, for me, would be Steve Ingham Solutions or something like that. So it is you. That's your name. And you see hundreds of these different versions in nutrition. Steve Ingham Nutrition, Ingham Nutrition, whatever it might be. So you call your thing the name after you. So the benefit of this is that it's easier to connect with you. If you search for nutrition provider and it says Steve Ingham Nutrition and you click on it, you're going to get a bloke called Steve Ingham. So it's easier to connect with you mentally. And there's probably for you, if you're choosing this option, it's quicker trust level. And you can probably evolve more quickly because it's within your gift. The only downside of this is that what if you're not there? And it's harder to scale and sell this off if you wanted to have ambitions of moving on from it, or you could just close it down, I guess. But if you're not there, to be able to sort of say, oh, yeah, you want Steve Ingham Nutrition Package, well, I'm going to send Bob instead. Oh, no, hang on a minute. I wanted to buy Steve Ingham Nutrition. So it's difficult to scale that beyond you just delivering your time. And it might mean that you end up pigeonholing yourself. So if you just want to do the same thing over and over, that's fine. But it could mean that you end up just going, well, that's what I do. That's all I have to offer. The non-personal version, so like supporting champions. So there's a degree of, what's that? I think I know what that is. And so choosing a name that you can, another version of this is something like, I don't know, Lexis Performance. You don't really know what that is, but it's sort of got a hint as to what it might be. Or it does what it says on the tin, like supporting champions. We're helping people to athletic performance. So this is where it's bigger than just you. People might come to supporting champions for me, but it's bigger than myself. So there's a bigger company-wide offering. There's a higher level of professionalism that is associated with a brand as opposed to Steve Ingham Nutrition. And it does suit scaling, and so you can flex a little bit more upward and downward or sell on if there is a brand and it's associated income with that. You have to do a little bit more effort to connect, and so often you have to explain this a little bit more. So you have to just make sure that you're building trust and that your values need to be more visible. And so this is a case of just making sure that, because they're not buying into you, they're buying into a company or a brand or what it offers, that your values need to be a little bit more upfront. And you'll hear that if you listen to the podcast, our podcast, Supporting Champions, you'll hear about the intent behind it. So that's something that just to bear in mind, that if you're putting a website together that is more of a concept name or just a non-personal name, just make sure your values are a bit more present. You can always change it if you need to. And so not deciding is the worst decision potentially that you could make, because you end up sort of going, I can't decide, so I won't do it. Well, actually just start, choose one of them. And if at some point you just think, you know what, I want to switch something over or I want to change it around, then you can just do that. You can change that legally, relatively easily. There's just obviously a branding association to do that. The next section is a little bit more about doubts and dynamics and the decisions you're going to have to make. And but before I do that, I want to just share you a little brief story about sensing an opportunity. And the reason I do this is because this is a funny, well, I think it's funny. This is a curious story that happened by chance that was extraordinarily serendipitous. But it was because I went for it. I sensed an opportunity. So I used to work at the British Olympic Association, and I used to go down to Wandsworth. I used to get off the train, the tube, and I used to walk about a mile to the offices. And the offices there were in the British Olympic Association. I would pass the offices of Ingham's Ski. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, my surname is Ingham, and I used to walk past it and think, yeah, I'm called Ingham, yeah. Anyway, and I was reading a book about running a business. This was back in 2003, I think it was actually. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. I thought, I wonder if they've got a fitness guide. I could write a fitness guide for them. I'm working with winter sports at the moment. So I got back to base and I phoned them up and I said, just out of interest, I'm curious to know, my name's Steve Ingham and I'm a sports scientist at the British Olympic Association. I've just got the same surname as you. And I just wondered if you ever needed a fitness guide, just something I could probably provide for you. And the woman at the end of the phone said, are you joking? Are you pulling my leg? What is this? I said, no, you can look me up online on the British Olympic Association's website. My name is Steve Ingham and I work with Olympic athletes, and I provide fitness support to those athletes. And she said, this is weird. I've just put the phone down from somebody who has decided not to continue to write the fitness guide that we'd asked them to write. And I was like, there you go, it's your lucky day. She said, but that's bizarre. I've literally just put the phone down from them. Right, can you come into the offices and we'll have a chat? So I went in, and for the first 15 minutes, the chief executive officer of Ingham's was going, you're called Ingham. And then I wrote this fitness guide, and that was a good degree of income for me. Good piece of work, interesting work. But it was all just because I went for it and I tried. And the reason I want to mention that is because it's a nice little contained story. But what if I didn't get any response? What if they said, no, not interested? It would be a very different story. And so when you're managing your doubts and your dynamics, you've got to recognize that not everybody's going to buy into you, what you need, what you want to sell or what you want to offer right there and then. And it's really easy for you to think, actually, I won't try. I won't communicate with the world. I won't put my head above the parapet. I won't offer something out to the world. And so imagining what people are saying about you or thinking about your offer can hold you back. And when I first got into corporate speaking, it was one of those things I was thinking, I'm not sure I'm worth this. I'm not sure I can do this. And it was actually some coaching advice I had from a good friend of mine who said, kill any of those doubts. You're anticipating some of the doubts that don't exist in people's heads. The same is true when I wrote How to Support Champion, that I had all these lovely, positive reviews, best-selling and all this sort of business, wonderful, recommended, totally disappointing. Oh, look, there's one dodgy review. Which is the one I listened to? Is probably that. And so if you've got 99 positive thoughts and feedback about your support, you often anticipate or worry too much about receiving some of that negative support, negative comments. So the easiest way of managing this, easiest way is having a blended role where you have some employment and some contractual work. And so you don't have to push quite as hard on your own consultancy work. Just see if something washes in, something that comes to you. You can have it open and a website, for example. And it's easier for you to start your consulting role, the consultancy, early career. It's harder to start it mid-career, I think. Because if you're in the middle of a role, you're part of an organization, you're part of a team, and then they say, oh, you've got this new website. What's going on there? Has your head turned? And so perceptions within an existing business versus starting while you're in a role, if you've already got something going, that's probably more acceptable for people than if you start something whilst you're in role. So if it's early for you, there's probably less for you to sell. Lower reputation, smaller network. If it's later, you might get the disapproval of your employer, but all or nothing. However, what it could mean is that you've got the opportunity to do some part-time work, some small consulting opportunities to sort of find your feet with this area. Maybe a little bit of retainer work where they're paying you a monthly fee for some work. On the downside is that there's a false sense of stability with that type of work, and so the bills might be covered, but there's no heat for you to actually drive and push. Because that's the upside of having the uncertainty, is you then go and make it happen. So here, this is where I would say, try and set boundaries to invest in your own products. If you've got some idea of, actually, I want to take on some part-time consultancy work, then put some time aside to that to create those products for yourself and protect your intellectual property. Set some clear deadlines and goals, otherwise it just never happens. If you're always just thinking, oh, well, I've got the mortgage covered from this other part-time work, well, you've got to then set some clear objectives as to driving your own offering. Otherwise, you'll never be accountable to creating sustainable your own income. So managing doubts is important for you, of thinking, oh, I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at promoting myself, I'm not very good at doing that. Well, for you, you've got to make sure that you can't please all the people all the time. And when you're putting something out there into the world, bear in mind that most people are probably going to scroll past it anyway, because they're just not thinking, oh, I need that at the moment. If they sense they need what you have to offer, they'll get in contact. If they don't, most people just scroll past something. So that's certainly how I view it. The tactic that's helped me over the years, that I think is common in the creator industry, is that you add value to people's lives, add value, and then if you have something to sell, you ask for people to sell. If it's all just sell, it doesn't go down that well. People tune out, people unsubscribe, unfollow. But if you're adding value, and then people are like, oh, that's really useful. Oh, you've got something to offer. Now's not the time, or actually now is the time. So they call this jab, punch, where it's value, and then sell. Stay true to your values. I mean, I've been offered all sorts of gimmicky, muscle-enhancing Twitch devices and being ambassadors for people like that, and offered silly money to do it. And I've had to say no, which I might be a bit poorer because of the consequences. But actually, I'm true to the values of professionalism and reputation and quality assurance, and I can sleep a bit more at night. The simple thing about actually pitching what you have to offer, because when I first started working in this area, everyone was like, "Come on, you need to at least communicate what you have achieved, what you have done, who you have worked with." And I was like, "Oh no, we're all very, very humble in performance support." And they're like, "This isn't about humility. You've just got to say what you did. That's the bit. It's not a case of hiding what you did. It's just communicating so that people understand who you are. Say what you did, what you can do, and no more and no less." And that, I think, is really, really important for you, because you don't have to be egotistical about this. You don't have to be doubtful about yourself. It's just doing and delivering and saying what you actually can achieve. Right, in terms of creating your offer, I'll give you a few bullet points on this, and I've got a video here that will play in the background. This is just a section from our consultancy course, so this is actually just a little exercise that you can go through yourself. The 3 stages of this, if you've got a website and you want to create an offer for somebody, the 3 things are problems, passions, and feelings. And so what you really need to be doing is spending some time thinking about what's the problem that your client is struggling with at the moment. So identifying a whole host of those, and the exercise on the video is actually a bit of a brainstorm of what are the potential problems that they're struggling with at the moment. The other is about passions. What can you commit to work on? So this is really important. You're going to fill your time doing this. It's a bit like choosing a PhD topic. You're going to fill your time doing this. What are you going to do? What are you going to offer? What are you passionate about that you can really engage with? Because if you're not passionate about it, if you don't have a kind of commitment behind your work, then people will sense that really quickly. And feelings. What will it feel like to work with you? Will it be professional? Will it be quality assured? Will it focus on client relationships? Will it be bespoke? Will it be boutique, as they sometimes call it, where it's very niche and designed for that person's simple offer? If I just jump across to in the video, you can see, look, the problem, coach doesn't understand some of the issues that are going on. Players not delivering tactics. There's fatigue during the match. Players not sticking to the plan. They keep losing. I think the particular example was around performance analysis, creating a performance analysis business. What am I passionate about? It could be data visualization. It could be problem solving. It could be all sorts of different ideas about developing confidence for people, and then what it feels like. So if you can think about that, what are the problems that my client's experiencing? How can I go about delivering that? And what's it going to feel like to work with me? A few other thoughts about creating your offer. One is about focusing on a narrow offer if you're just starting out. And so the reason for that is that you want people to land on your material and think, that's what I need. Or they think, I don't need that. And that's what you need. What you don't need is lots of time them thinking, what's this all about? Is this what I need? I don't know. So when they land, they should be able to see the problem solved for themselves or not. So they say that the riches is in the niches. It's a very American pronunciation of riches, niches, sorry. But focusing down actually adds more value to start off with. And the downside of appealing too broadly is that somebody can't recognize that you'll solve their problem straight away. And the advantage is if you narrow down is that if they can see that you're a specialist at a certain thing, whether that is physiotherapy for adolescent tennis players, that might be your thing. And then they might go, I wonder if you do that for slightly older players. So it's likely that people will start to see that you're expert at certain areas. And once they've got trust in you, then they'll start to ask for additional work, which just means that you can broaden out a little bit. All right, so I'm going to wrap up a bit now, just with some tips, 7 tips. And then if there's any questions that you'd like to ask, start posting those into the chat conversation so I can see those and I can try and respond to those as best I can. Okay, so thinking about going for your own consultancy, think about assessing your own tolerance for risk, action, opportunity, and creating. So are you risk averse? And if you are, then maybe a blended role is better for you to start off with. If you're action oriented, then it may well be that actually a consultancy is really good for you. If you do like creating and you want to look for those opportunities yourself, then that could be something that really appeals to your inner drivers and motivations. Choose a name and commit and just go for it. Choose something simple that speaks to what you have to offer. You can go for it, all or nothing, fully in, or you can have a blended role. The blended has some benefits in that you can just chip away and grow that slowly. The downside of blended is that you have to go and work on it, perhaps when you haven't got the pressure of having to earn. When you're setting up your consultancy, try and spend some time thinking about being clear on your values. What is it that you want to do? Who do you want to work with? Who don't you want to work with? How do you want this to run? And making sure that you are clear about how you can add value to other people's work. I think my tip is that choose your responses to any criticism before they actually take place. That's why I think after you've delivered some work, you should reflect and review. This is what went well, what didn't go so well, before you actually get any criticism or any doubts and so on. I think creating a clear and narrow niche is probably one of the best places to start. It could be that it's just a generic offering, Bob's Nutrition, but it might be that you actually try and zoom it in a little bit that speaks to your expertise, speaks to your experience, and that you have a network that you can offer this into. And that probably will give you, in terms of income at least, some momentum. Like I say, we have got additional courses in this area. We have an active community who are creating loads of different conversations about consultations, pricing, setting up your own consultancy, the pros and cons. We've got lots of additional webinars. If anyone's interested in that, then they can go to supportingchampions.co.uk. All right, that's probably enough from me. I'm going to pause now and just see if there are. Has anybody got any questions? And if they have, then I'll try and respond to those. If not, I'm going to wish you well on this wonderful Friday. So let's have a little look, see if anyone got any questions. I'm going to pause and fill for a bit. If anything has surprised you or you're not sure about, then let me know too, and that would be great. But otherwise, I hope that you have had some value from the conversation. At the very least, recognizing the strengths, the weaknesses, the things that are good, things that are bad, things that can potentially help you, things that you might have to overcome, the things that you have to talk through yourself. So, first question up. Ian, thank you for your question, Ian. Good to connect with you. As a trainee sports psych, not working in sport, my biggest issue has been accessing clients and building a client base. Any tips? So, there's a simple approach of knocking on doors. So going around talking to people and saying, look, this is what I've got to offer. Could I offer some support? If you're not charging for those clients, there might be a period of time where you have to do something for free. Look, I'm offering 6 weeks worth of mental skills training, one day a week, or whatever it might be. Is this something you'd be interested in taking up? And at the end of that, you say, if you'd like to take this up further, then off we go. That's a very clear selling process. Ian, what I would really strongly suggest is if you have simple contacts, and that could be a club that you're already playing for, or that you know somebody is already a good performer at a certain level, ask them. Because cold calling or knocking on doors is a bit soulless, got to be honest. You could try it, it works, But if you know the person already and say, would you be interested in that? Then what you can get is somebody who's going to promote you within that club. And so they trust you, you trust them, and they are trusted. But it typically comes from your network. You either go and build your network or you use your network. And that's true of most jobs working in the area. So typically, professional football clubs, for example, don't put out many adverts. You don't see the number of adverts out there. And that's because they're already recruiting people they know and trust. And so get into that space of developing that network and putting good work out there. The other approach that you can take in is putting good content out onto social media. So it could be, here's a short blog on LinkedIn. Here's a little bit about about a client that I've worked with, or my approach to working on mental skills, or whatever it might be. And here's my website. And then if somebody's appreciated and had that value, then they'll click through. And a small percentage will click through, but a small percentage would then look at your website, and a small percentage will buy or get in contact and say, I like that. That was really useful. Could you help me? And that's what's called digital marketing. So digital content-based marketing, where you're getting people to buy from you because you've created good content for them. I hope that's been useful, Ian. Hopefully you can get some clients, get some work going in that area. I think sports psych is a really interesting one because sports psychology, sports nutrition is much more au fait, and it's more acceptable to have your own consultancy than it might be for a biomechanist or a physiologist or a strength and conditioning coach. So yeah, you're amongst many other people who are having to work through this particular problem. Great question, Ian. Cheers. Good. Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Okay. Any other questions? I'll pause for a moment whilst we're just seeing if there's any coming through. I always like a few questions, There's me ranting on about stuff, but why not try and make it useful for you instead, as in your context. I'll have a drink of water whilst I'm waiting for a question. All right. No questions. I can't see any more. All right, so all the best to everybody. I hope that was useful for you, and I'm wishing you all the best, because I think these ventures that you might be cooking up, thinking about, go for it. Try and create something. I think this world is growing increasingly, and more people are going to be doing this. And so opening up the conversation, getting some support, having people, like-minded individuals who are co-supporting each other. I think there's enough room for a lot of us out there. So I'm wishing you well. Have a great day and take care.